There is a crazy new study that has come out that is showing exactly how accurate ChatGPT is at predicting human behavior. And in addition, OpenAI has some new addition to their board. So we're going to be talking about all of this on the podcast today. This is absolutely fascinating. I want to kick this over to Connor as we kick off because he has written an absolute banger of a LinkedIn post about this, outlining really this new interesting study that came out around ChatGPT and kind of how it predicts human behavior. So, Connor, tell us what you are seeing in this study.
This is wild. This study is literally dated just a couple of days ago. It comes out of NYU and Stanford. I am at NYU. I do not know the participants who did this, but it's just wild because the title of the paper is "Predicting Results of Social Experiments Using Large Language Models." And for a long time, I do trainings with companies, and I have this new course, digital self-paced course coming out, and all that kind of stuff. And I just talk a ton about behavior and how we use this and how it's all in our brains and all that kind of stuff. But one of the really cool things that I've kind of tend to train people on, or show people how to use, is what I call the infinite focus group, which just means that you can essentially create, say like, hey, give me 10 people in a Kansas grocery store considering buying yogurt, different demographics, tell me who they are, where they come from, let me interview them. And look, is it perfect human replica? No, of course not. But it just gives you the quick and dirty sort of idea of how people are going to react. What are some possible things they can say? ChatGPT, almost better than it does anything else, I think, is mimic human behavior. And this has just been my own anecdotal, hey, this is what I'm finding. So anytime you do that, and anytime you actually find researchers who have done a study, you're like kind of secretly breathe a sigh of relief, because you never know if people are going to believe you or not. But this has been amazing. I mean, essentially what they're saying in this is that GPT-4 matched or surpassed human forecasters with a correlation coefficient of 0.85, which just meaning that like at least 85% of, not at least, kind of on average, I guess, 85% of cases, they can predict how humans are going to react, how are they going to behave. And they did this. The vehicle they used was, if they were doing social experiments, you guys have all read about social experiments. They're like, hey, we gave 3 humans these 3 jars, that kind of thing. ChatGPT can imitate and predict how they're going to behave. And the reason that they realized that this wasn't just even on like learning from training data is that for unpublished studies, meaning things that ChatGPT could not possibly have learned about in their training data, it was even higher. It was close to like 90% or something like that in terms of predicting human behavior. It's also accurate across genders, political affiliations, things like that. And they did it with a ton of survey data. I guess I'm so fascinated by this, Jaden, because if this is real and this is a published study, I mean, like, brilliant authors and all that kind of stuff, and you can look it up yourself. What's so interesting to me is if this is real, the implications for sales, HR, negotiation, all these things are absolutely colossal, because what you can do when you combine it with something like voice is practice sales calls, practice negotiation, practice hard conversations, things like that. You can create what I call infinite focus groups. There's so much you can do if you have at your fingertips at the desktop just a litany of essentially pretend humans that you can interact with. Anyway, I was blown away by this whole thing.
Yeah, the thing that I think is really interesting about this, like I'm like, how did they do this or how does it work? And I think one of the big things is like you have to look where the data comes from. And so a huge part of the training sets you have to imagine is like these online communities and forums. So things like Reddit, for example, they're going to have an entire Republican Reddit forum or liberal Reddit forum or the Donald or Joe Biden, I love Joe Biden, or like whatever your political affiliation is, or your race or your gender, or there's all these like we have like these groups and cliques online, and so it's people that are in those groups or are whatever, and how they talk. And so I think it's really interesting because we have it like it's very well categorized, how different people interact, behave, talk, think. And yeah, I mean, I'm just like so fascinated by it. I'm so interested, but I think it's really really cool that we essentially have this ability to pull from those groups, and now all of a sudden ChatGPT knows how people are going to respond to things. I think what's really interesting to me is the ability to you mentioned like HR, and like I'm just thinking of, my mind is kind of just like reeling with so many interesting use cases. But like imagine you're like an HR person and you're like, okay, I need to negotiate a salary with X, Y, and
Right.
Z person for this thing. And like imagine you just go to their LinkedIn profile
Yes.
You screenshot their profile picture, you copy all of their data, you throw it in, and you're like, okay, I'm negotiating with this person based off
Yep.
of everything you can see and about them and everything that they've done. What salary should I come in at? How should I negotiate it? How should I position it? Should I, focus on how this is going to be a big career step for them, or should I focus on how much money this is, or their family, or like what? Right? Like, there's just like so many
Yeah.
interesting aspects, and being able to trust that the model is able to actually like give you a very realistic response. And so obviously there's like that funny like negotiate a salary one. This, like you mentioned, goes into so many different areas. Anyway, that anytime that you're dealing with people, which is a, a huge chunk of everything that a business will do or a business professional will do. Anytime you're dealing with people, you can essentially build almost like a customer persona around like a fictional person, but that represents a real person or real people, and you have a pretty good likelihood of knowing how they will respond to certain things, which I think is so fascinating.
No, this I totally agree, and you bring up a great point, which is, there's we don't talk a lot of like just straight up use cases because Jaden and I think agree on this that it's not really worth it to talk about use cases with ChatGPT. What's worth it is to think about different ways of thinking, right? That's sort of how I do, my do digital course and stuff like that. It's not about like a ton of use cases because then you're just kind of pulling use cases off the shelf. But think about what Jaden is saying there. Like if you know that this thing can imitate human behavior really, really well, that is out of the box, plain vanilla. Hey, create a person that is sort of this basic demographic of somebody I'm going to negotiate against. Or I go online and I look up Jaden Schaefer and I find out there's a ton online about Jaden Schaefer. I pull everything I can about him, what he likes, all that kind of stuff. And then I add in anything that I might know. And then I say, okay, now take on the role of Jaden Schaefer and I'm going to negotiate against you in some way. So it's the context that, this comes from you. This comes from you adding things in, but just the ability, if this is it almost reminds me of a sci-fi movie, Ex Machina or something like that, where like the underlying technology of a robot is one thing, but then you almost like layer the user interface on top. Like, what does this person look like? What is it? And it's going to have the same brain underneath. It's going to have this chat GPT for brain. And we have that now. That's the thing. We keep thinking like, well, what's the future going to be like with this? Folks, we have this now. If it really does this, and by the way, if this study was run, I'm guessing this study was run prior to 4.0 coming out, 4 Omni, as they call it, coming out. So the model is only more powerful now. It's only getting better at imitating human behavior. I promise that this is only going to get better and better. Again, so whatever you are doing in like your work life, all that kind of stuff, there is absolutely no question that you are going to have to sell to somebody in some way, negotiate with somebody, pitch your idea, all that kind of stuff. Don't forget, use this as not just a sounding board, like, hey, whatever, but also you can say, hey, I need to pitch this to this group and I work for this company. No proprietary data. You just say what company you work for. It just personalizes it so quickly. And it just feels like the use cases are going to be extraordinary for this.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to say on this before we move on is that I've kind of already been using ChatGPT for a lot of these same use cases, but I always love to see a study that validates what I've been using
Right.
it for and being
Right.
like, yes, it actually works. It actually understands these people, and it's giving you actually accurate responses. I love that. The one other thing I wanted to mention is that OpenAI has just added a new member to their board. You know, the OpenAI board has had so much drama when after Sam Altman was kicked off, then the board kind of imploded and exploded, and different people got kicked off, and there's some people that are still on, and I believe
Right.
Adam D'Angelo is still on, but
He is.
Helen
D'Angelo is
Toner,
still on. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, got kicked off. Anyways, all the drama. So there is a new board member, and that is Zico Coulter. So he is a professor of machine learning over at Carnegie Mellon. So obviously, like, he's a very technical person to get on their board, someone that has a very technical understanding of exactly what they're doing and how it works. I think this is pretty awesome. Um, they said in their blog post that he is a quote invaluable technical director for OpenAI's governance. Um, and anyways, ever since Ilya Sutskever kind of had to leave, they really wanted someone that was very solid when it came to the technical stuff. And it seems like they found a person there. I'm super curious to see as they kind of start rebuilding this board what that looks like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I just think this is
Yeah,
really
no,
interesting. We're
I
getting
think
more
no, but this
technical.
is I agree. So, again, Helen Toner left, Tasha McCauley left. I'm pretty sure, Adam, what's his name again? Adam D'Angelo is still there, doing very well for himself, by the way, because he has other huge businesses going on. But yeah, the Coulter one is interesting because he actually is. Not only is he sort of like the first, computer science guy, I believe, on or straight up computer science guy, I believe, on the board, but he's just going to be a part of this safety and security committee. And especially at a time when Anthropic is really grabbing the reins of this, especially at a time when they have high profile departures over this, this could not come at a better time. He is outside. He's held roles over at Bosch and this place called Gray Swan, which is a startup that specializes in AI safety and security. And this is the thing: his own team was developing these techniques for just like automatically assessing safety of large language models and things like that, looking for vulnerabilities, et cetera, et cetera. They need somebody like this on the board. Anthropic, it's built into Anthropic's DNA. It's like if you're buying a Volvo, you know what you are buying. OpenAI does not have that same kind of thing. So, and I think OpenAI realized that with their previous board, it wasn't the long-term benefit trust where that was Anthropic, but however their nonprofit board was set up, which led to the entire demise back in November with Helen Toner, Tasha McCauley. These were slightly more academic people who kind of had their own perception on things. I think with this, they're going to bring in somebody who's a Sam Altman kind of person who's focused on obviously making money, but also just look, forget about regulation, all that, not forget about regulation, but I think what they're thinking is we don't want to go on the regulation hunt. We don't want to slow down our models, all that kind of stuff. We want to speed up, but we want to make sure that that safety harness is strapped in. And what better way than to bring in people at the top level who are really focused on this?
Yeah, 100%. What I'm really excited about as far as this kind of new direction is that he's like very technical and he's been in the field and like working in AI companies and working in the space for a while. Like you mentioned, he was formerly the chief data scientist at C3 AI. He did a PhD in computer science at Stanford back in
Right, right, right.
2010. He did a postdoctoral fellowship at MIT. And then, yeah, all of his research was kind of around some of the potential to bypass existing AI safety guards through automated optimization techniques, aka like using bots and automation and different things to like get around. So I think he's get around AI safety. So I think he's like very aware of the limitations of the technology we currently have, where the industry's at. And you mentioned he's kind of a chief expert over at Bosch. He's a chief technical advisor at Gray Swan. So someone deeply embedded in the industry. I'm excited to see where this goes, and not just with him, but with any other board members they bring on. It seems like they're going to have a very solid group of people that they'll be able to bring in as board members. So very
Yeah, and
excited about that.
I agree, and they have to build it out. It's yeah, but it'll be interesting to sort of like watch and to sort of see what happens next with them. I think, especially around safety. Folks, if you listen to this podcast, if you think that Jade and I are decent human beings that just want to make the world a little bit of a better place and help us out with AI, we only have one request. It's a big one. It's a big one, but here it comes. Here it comes. If you're willing to just take 30 seconds and leave a rating and review today, it would make our day. We literally read every single one. It's amazing. We're so grateful for you, for all of you for listening and supporting the show and everything like that. And this would just be an amazing gift that you could give us if you are willing. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you have an amazing rest of the day.